Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. Moving on here. Okay, looking here, we've got okay a brief introduction here to the second sage, Mencius. Okay, yeah, he was. You can see down here Confucius, his lifetime here, roughly 2,500 years ago. And then just about 100 years after Confucius came Mencius, and he is considered second only to Confucius as far as being the wisest, most prominent Confucian philosopher. Okay, and one of his main and foundational contributions was to elucidate to everyone through his writings that human beings are innately good. Okay. And of course, there he's not talking about the carnal mind. He's not even talking about the human mind, which can go good or bad. He's talking about the conscience there when he says humans are innately good. Okay. And just for some context, for Mencius's life. And um, Zhu Xi is also a very well-known Confucian philosopher who came much later, and even later was Wang Yangming, who was kind of. Anyways, I'm not going to go into those guys very much. People who already have some background can then kind of see uh, when everyone was alive and get some context there. Most important is some context then with when Mencius was alive in relation to Confucius. Anyways, ancient, ancient. Mencius, he is one of the ancients along with Confucius. Okay. Now, one of his big things to help all of us understand, conscience better, he laid out something that um, clarified equality. Okay. And as we talked about in part one in the writing and in the videos there, the one equal thing that is shared amongst all humans is science. Con being mutually shared and science meaning knowledge or knowing, a mutual knowing. What do all people equally and mutually know? The conscience. Okay. And while there are other things that make humans equal, and we can talk about those another time, there are some other things. There are many things that make humans unequal. Many things. And within human life and in the natural world, the inequality of things is the nature of things. That is a, a very important this quote this day and age where many people are trying to figure that out. What is equality? How equality can be um, attained, and without an understanding of what is truly equal and what is absolutely unequal between humans, it's impossible to get to a more beneficial state of equality amongst humanity. It can't, there's just, I see the only way to do it is to understand that the conscience is the only true, not the only, but a very important common ground amongst humans. And if it's understood, then other unequal things can be dealt with humanely, sanely, peacefully, harmoniously, without a whole bunch of other collateral damage taking place in the effort to create equality. Now, it's important that, some people just cannot get a clear understanding about what equality is. And then they can't get a clear understanding about what are solutions to actual inequalities. And one reason for that is because of the lack of connection to conscience. And with a lack of connection to conscience comes a lack of common sense. a lack of clarity, objectivity, okay? And a lack of the ability to discern, right? Right? And there's so many exact examples of poor discernment. I mean, I want to bring up just a few, one of them being that we we discern so many times that ourselves being right about something is more important than being in a harmonious relation with another person, right? You know, being right, it, being right is important, but it can be important just for yourself. And then it doesn't necessarily have to be, it can't really, it can't be forced upon another person, right? So people who have differing points of view that get into the habit or the game of trying to make another person understand what their rightness can often create, okay, disharmony. So it, being right is not always more important than social harmony. It's not always right. Okay. It's important to be right, but taking a more patient approach and even allowing someone who is wrong to go through their own process is important. Important for both people. And I don't want to get into that anymore because that have to go deep into that, and that's outside of the realm of what we're talking about here. But I'm talking about here uh, losing contact with the conscience breeds an inability to discern between things. Like, for example, a very extreme example is not being able to discern between genders. That is that to not be able to see what is a male and what is a female, okay? Strictly speaking, is the ability to discern has been severely impaired, and that has to do with the disconnect from the conscience. Okay. And this goes into what I talked about before. This inability to discern is has to do with seeing problems in life can only be solved with science, technology, and now AI. And it's a severe impairment of discernment. Okay. Obviously the collateral damage that's taking place as AI is being developed is more and more clear. So, hey, is it really so paramount to develop it to solve humanity's problems? Obviously not, but it's only obvious to certain people. Okay. And it's obvious to people who have retained a good connection to the conscience, a strong connection, who have retained understanding of nature and the inequality of things. Okay? They understand that in life there are hierarchies, there are things, there are people, there are that are bigger than ourselves, that are more important than ourselves, that deserve respect, and they don't deserve to be thoughtlessly um, affected or even destroyed. They deserve to be respected. There's a hierarchy in life. Okay? And being able to discern that requires a connection with conscience, going beyond oneself, right? Going beyond one's own ideas sometimes, right? So Mencius talked about that inequality, but he also talked, no, we talked about it last in part one. Equality, we can be clear. Conscience is equally shared amongst all humans, right? And if with that understanding, if more and more people have that understanding, then we can begin to express it. And Mencius talked about how it's expressed, and he talked about, yeah, love, which is great. When he said conscience is to love others. And now this is actually a huge topic because we all of us kind of see, oh, love, okay, right. Well, Of course, or maybe we might say, oh, that's right, or that's good. But there is an issue here. Strictly speaking, objectively speaking, well, what is love, right? It's, there are all kinds of love. And then you have on top of that, on the different kinds of love, you have everyone's own ideas about what love is. And especially in this day and age where there's just so many, people's ability to to be intellectual and cerebral about things and then put the information out, especially out online. There's just so much information about there. And then you add to that a certain type of thinking where everyone's ideas are right, which creates relativism. And relativism is a precipitous thing at best. Okay. And with regards to love, it's also very, very precarious because with relativism and everybody's ideas about love are right, clarity is lost. And it can lead to people thinking that they have love, are expressing love when they are, quite frankly, they could be doing the exact opposite. Okay. So just for some, for a bit of explanation about what the ancients of China talked about as love, one of them was filial love. That being loving reverence and respect for one's parents, right? The creator of one's everything, right? Everything. And there's nothing without the parents. There is nothing, right? So the ancient Chinese intuited, realized that there needs to be filial love. Okay? And then filial love, it's a whole big subject. And even modern Chinese these days are not super clear about what filial love is, even though they might say it actually more than they did maybe 20, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago. Okay, as traditional Chinese culture has kind of gained become more prevalent in the Chinese mind in the past decade. But regardless of the prevalence in mind, it's not necessarily more prevalent in practice. Um, to keep this simple without and less long-winded, filial love, okay, is um is to think and to speak and to act in a way that puts parents at ease. I like to say to soothe one's parents' mind, to soothe their heart. Okay. And there's a myriad ways to do that. There are, of course, basic ways like, you got to be able to take care of yourself. First and foremost, take care of your body and stay healthy. If you can do that, well, then of course, parents are more, their minds are at rest, they're at peace there because of that. And then, you can develop a career in a way that gives you the finances you need to take care of yourself even more and your loved ones, and therefore your parents are more at ease. And then hopefully you're not doing things to yourself and to others that are bringing about um, defilements, tarnishings to the reputation of your parents. So those are some basic ways to be filial, to express filial love. And filial love in Confucianism is the number one virtue. And we'll talk about a list of virtues, and filial love is number one. And it's a great contribution to the whole tapestry of humanity from China is to put focus on the parents. And of course, in Western culture, there is also focus on the parents. It's quite natural. But the Chinese definitely focused on it more, went into it more. It just became a part of the fabric of their entire culture, part of their DNA, a part of their bones. Okay. Now, back to Mencius here and helping us to understand what conscious is and its nature and how to express it. He also talked about its location. Okay. And he talked about, and he said simply, conscience is the human mind. And I want to qualify this quickly here that you have the carnal mind, which is the mind made up of carnal survival um, desires and inclinations and needs, right? And he's not talking about that. You also have what's normally called the human mind, which is the human mind, which can be good or evil, good or bad, depending on, one's upbringing, the environment, one's own habits. It can flip-flop. He's not talking about that when he says the human mind. He's talking about the conscience. And as far as that flip-flopping human mind goes, if as the conscience is more and more prevalent, it suffuses throughout the human mind, that flip-flopping human mind more and more until it does not flip-flop anymore. It's face up, upright and conscience. Okay. Now, what's interesting when it comes to the matter of mind here within traditional Chinese culture, okay, there are two minds. Okay, I just talked about three, right? I just talked about three, the carnal mind, the human mind, and the conscience. Okay, which you could say is also another type of mind, right? That it really in Chinese language, especially the old Chinese mind, there's all kinds of minds. But I want to talk about the differentiation between the two minds of the flip-flopping human mind and the conscience mind. Okay. So as you're taking a look here at the screen, right? For most of us, it takes first understanding clearly who and what we are, right? Until we can come to, until we can understand what the conscience is, which is who we truly are. But to do that, we have to sift. We have to sift through things, okay? We have to sift through things such as the body and the feelings and the thoughts and ideas and the emotions, as well as whatever's going on outside of ourselves, to be able to discern what this conscience is. Okay. So taking a look at the screen here. Okay. This we've got here a human, right? And Confucius, he said something very interesting. He said, humans are upright at birth. And this echoes, okay? This echoes what Mencius said when he said humans are innately good. Now, Confucius, he said humans are upright at birth. And he's talking there about the conscience being upright, okay? Right? The human mind, right? It flip-flops between good and evil, okay? Right? But the conscience is different. And within traditional Chinese culture and old Chinese and Chinese characters, the Chinese characters can represent great meaning, deep meaning. They can represent profound meaning. And through Chinese characters, we can understand more about the two minds, the human flip-flopping mind and the conscious mind. The conscious mind is represented by the character you can see on the screen there. Okay. And we talked about this a little bit in part one, right? This character here, which is not exactly strictly a character. It's actually a radical. It's part of a character. Okay. But regardless that it's not a complete Chinese character, it still has representative meaning. And it represents the straight and the narrow, the upright, the conscious mind. Okay. In contrast with the human mind. Okay. The human mind, which you can see here, represented here by the heart. Okay. And then within the heart, you have an actual complete Chinese character, which is the character for heart or mind. But you can see that this character is crooked and bent and not straight. Okay. Which illustrates the potential for the human mind, which can flip-flop and then flip-flop into evil, evil thoughts, right? Into thoughts and ideas that are not in connection with the upright conscious mind. Okay. So by knowing the conscience and thinking and speaking and acting from it, well, so many benefits are attained. So many benefits are attained. But first, you got to be able to know it or actually re-know it because we were quite familiar with it when we were babes. Okay. So we're growing up. Now we need to re-realize it, re-realize it, right? Re-know it. And that means we need insight. Okay. Now, insight, right? Taking a look here again at at Chinese characters, right? Right? Taking a look at the screen here, we have, okay, again, that part of the of a character of a Chinese character that means upright mind or conscience. Okay. It's called the Shu Xin Pang. Okay, or right, and it's actually radical for characters, but it represents the upright mind or conscience. Okay. Now, what I'm talking about here is insight. And the Chinese character for insight actually provides insight into how to get insight and into what to get insight into. Okay. So the left side of the Chinese character for the word insight has our upright mind or conscience. Now, on the right side of the character, you have the character for I, me, or mine. Okay. And this is the old character for I, me, or mine. Okay. For anyone studying Chinese or curious about Chinese, this is the modern character used for I, me, mine. Okay. And this is the old character. Okay. But these two, right? This these two actually come together to form the character for insight or Wu. Okay. Okay, and Wu means to realize the upright mind, to realize my upright mind. Okay, to sift through all of the things that I may have previously thought that was me, to see them for what they truly are, to the point where I put less importance on them and I put more importance on the conscience to the point where I come to a deep realization or insight into the conscience, which is what this character here represents. Okay. Right. And we really are not our body. We are really not our feelings, not our thoughts and emotions or the things around us that we possess. That's not who we truly are. Those things, like our body, right, changes constantly, right? So the feelings change like the wind. Our thoughts, they come and go in constant, each and every thought. Every emotion arises and goes away, right? So, I mean, if you're going to say something that isn't correct, but it's more correct than saying, I am my body, this is who I am. I am my new Lamborghini, that's who I am. That's who makes me up. That's what makes me feel like I'm someone, right? Though that those are inaccurate ways to understand oneself. More accurate would be to say that I am change, but that also leaves questions, right? Okay. If you are change, then that means that you might think that there is nothing that is constant and doesn't change. But that goes against what the ancients have taught. That goes against my own realization, because there is something that is true and constant, that is not subject to the dualistic dynamic of change, the up and down, the side to side, the in and out, the appearing and disappearing act of all things that change. There is something that is not subject to all of those fluctuations, and that is the conscience. That's what the sages said. The first sage Confucius and the second sage Mencius. They're all pointing to that. Okay. And it needs insight beyond our senses. It cannot be seen with our eyes or touched with our bodies, but only realized within. And so insight is realizing the upright mind. And insight can come from, pondering, meditating on profound questions. For example, the question that Confucius gave to his best student when he asked him, does conscience come from oneself or from others? This, the upright mind, this conscience that is completely good. Is it from me or is it from you? Is it from we? Is that goodness from you, from me, or from we? Well, at any rate, it's all good. It's that fundamental. It doesn't differentiate between you and I, me and you, we, he or she. Okay. It's fundamental to all of that. It's basic to all of that. It's deeper than all of that. Okay. And this here is a question that can be found in the Analects. It's a profound question. It's actually was asked rhetorically. It's a teaching in and of itself. The answer is only within the conscience. The answer is only found within the conscience. And this type of questioning, it's kind of Socratic, right? Right? Using questions to stimulate understanding. This question actually was asked by Confucius because he is such, he's a great, he's well known for his ability to teach according to the proclivity of the student. 因材施教, right? He and his top student, right? Or his not top student, for example, Zhengzi, who was a good student, but he wasn't on par with his top student, whose name was Yan Huiyan. Actually, the Analects are all is a record of conversations largely between Confucius and his students or other people that he knew, people of government, people of business, people of society. And, he had conversations with them, and you know, he was giving them teachings according to where they personally were in their own development. And we then reading the Analects are just a third party there, gleaning as much as we can. But if we were to ask similar questions, we would probably get different answers because it's a totally different person in a different situation. And Confucius was very well known for his ability to teach according to the material or the proclivities and abilities of the student. One such example, and I brought up kind of, I think in part one, was he was teaching his student Zhengzi, and he called out to him, and he said, "Watch," you know, didn't. just call out his name. He said to him, "Hey, watch." And then he said, "My way is penetrated by one." Okay. And for almost everyone, that is a huge riddle. It's a riddle, but it was perfect for Zhuangzi at the time. Okay, because Confucius was teaching according to the proclivity of Zhuangzi at that time. And he did the same with his best student, Yan Yuan. And Yan Yuan asked about conscience. He asked about conscience. And Confucius gave him this answer. And Yan Yuan, this student of Confucius's, was Confucius's most devoted student. What he learned from his teacher, he put it into practice until it became a part of him, until he was living it. And therefore Confucius put him in the highest regard and then was able to teach him on different levels, on a deeper level than most everyone else. So Confucius taught him about what conscience was and how it needs discernment to be able to differentiate between what one thinks one is and what one truly is. And then to bring one's own thinking and speaking and acting into the realm of propriety. And the more that can be sustained, the more it can enact a beneficial influence upon the network of conscience. And the more it enacts that beneficial effect upon the network of conscience, the more people are connected to the network of conscience to the point where everything it returns to conscience. Okay. And this is very profound. Okay. By practicing the conscience, by applying the conscience, everything returns to conscience. Okay. And in Chinese, that means everything in the universe. Okay. And this requires a level of attainment, of insight into the conscience to see, you know, what the modern day or the 20th century philosopher now hygiene, what he said was that um, conscience is the attainment of unity of self and all things, the unity between self and all things, which means there is no self and there are no things, not really. There's only conscience and it's unfolding and its natural um, motion to consummate itself, to complete itself, to manifest itself each and every moment. There is only that. Okay? This attainment of the conscience is the realization of the essence and function of conscience, which creates a choicelessness of being or existence, a choicelessness of existence. Okay. As I wrote in my paper and in an article, choicelessness here is not in the negative sense, for example, of being bound to a situation or to a problem where one's ability to see the situation or problem clearly, to strategize a solution and execute a solution is suppressed or even oppressed until one finds oneself in an unbearable and painful situation. I don't mean choicelessness here. I mean instead, choicelessness arises from the unity of mind, thought, word, and action with the stillness and creative action of conscience. Stillness is the essence of conscience. Action, creativity is its function. When the stillness arises, it is naturally tolerated, abided, and existed in without feelings of limitation, without feeling bound or feeling forced. Conversely, when it is time to move and act, and the action is clearly aligned with conscience, it unfolds itself naturally. The action unfolds itself naturally, properly, and in harmony with the situation of the moment. In this sense, there is choicelessness. The ego's not involved. What needs to take place takes place, and it takes place in and of itself, regardless even of itself, regardless of what one thinks might need to happen, right? It plays out according to its own motion. There is just conscience. With choicelessness, there is just conscience. There is just conscience with its essence, as still as a mountain, and its function is active as water. Okay? Upon a foundation of stillness comes limitless creative action, but proper action, precise action. Okay? And if you want to get more insight on what that action looks like, observe children playing. Take some time. Go look at it. Go watch children playing. You can gain insight into how it looks. Okay? And then you can sit still, quiet your mind, quiet it down, focus, and then observe children again. Or even maybe listen to some good music. Okay? Okay? You will gain insight into how creativity, okay, unfolds. Now, I think that there is, I remember looking or reading about how in Google search, certain search words were increasing and being searched for. And one that was not increasingly being searched for was virtue. And I'm sure conscience is too. And there's a lack of interest in it. And I think there's a lack of interest in conscience because some people that say conscience is, very important, for example, like myself, you know, okay, they haven't fully realized it enough. And they're not exemplifying all its attributes, okay, including its playfulness and its creativity, okay, and even its stillness, that mountain-like stillness, okay, and that results in a dryness, a repetitiveness, and it turns can make people less interested, okay. Um, but in the third video of this part, I will go into more about how it's not an easy thing to realize, the stillness and this action. Okay, so please view the next video, the third and last video of this part 2.